So one thing to really make sure people see this as a coffee cup and not just a circle with a strange shape coming out of the end is adding a little bit more dimension. So what I thought we would do is add a little bit of shadow that's cast on the rim onto the cup of coffee. Because eventually I'm just trying to kind of think about color a little bit. I thought about making the center a nice coffee medium brown color. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a shadow that goes around the rim that's cast so you can see the difference of where the rim is and where the inside coffee is. Just a little shadowing. So I'm going to just go ahead and get an ellipse tool. Just going to draw a circle. I'm going to make it a stroke, and let's make it a different color so we can see what we're doing. Okay, we can add a little bit of coloring here. Let's add a color we're already using. So let's add, just to reduce the overall color count, let's go ahead and use the eyedropper tool and take that color of shade. And I think that's the same shading that's cast here on the handle. Let's make it a little bit thicker. We're just adding a little shadow for the rim that's cast down into the glass. So we could do that, and if we're not happy with kind of how it looks kind of perfectly even, we kind of have an angle, we kind of have a top-down view, but maybe the angle is a little bit over to one side. It's not a totally top-down angle. We can kind of change that a little bit by using the width tool. So we're going to grab the width tool. We're just going to make one side a little bit thicker than the other, which will kind of give it a little bit more dimension. It's not going to be perfectly even. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, and see how it just makes it a little bit thicker on one side. Okay, so you see it's a very kind of small change I made, but it gives it a little bit more dimension. It looks like the angle is just 1 or 2 degrees over from top down, kind of gives it a more natural appearance. And plus it gives us a chance to have another little border here to differentiate from the coffee that's going to be inside the cup. And let's say at any time I'm like, I really want to make that mug thicker. Some people would add a stroke of the same color and outline the stroke, or you could just go up to path, offset path, and add a little bit more to it, just like that. And I just automatically thickened it without having to mess around with a lot of stuff. Right, so now I'm just going to mess with spacing a little bit and just kind of make sure there's enough spacing between elements. And we can even check on our grid. We're going to be using grids a lot in the rest of the class, and making sure there's the same distance between the C and the G and then the C and the outside of the cup, just to have consistency with spacing and to kind of have a uniform look with that. And we could do that on the grid. We can also do that by eye, by just kind of drawing a rectangle here and just kind of seeing the spacing here and making adjustments. This is not a scientific way of doing it, but it kind of helps with nudging it over just a little bit to make sure that that spacing is matched. And so we can always pop in the grid at any time to do that, but we're going to do that after we're kind of done with concept time, because we don't need to be perfect right now. The client hasn't even approved some of these yet, so we're just kind of getting the rough idea together so we can send it in for approval. So the way you use contrast in a logo is to accentuate certain items over others, and the shadow is really, now that I'm kind of looking at this and I'm zooming out, I'm seeing those shadows is really drawing way too much attention. So I'm just going to simply take everything that's that shade, and I'm just going to lighten it just a little bit, just to have a little less contrast between the shadow and the mug. So you have a little bit more contrast, or a little bit more focus on the C and the G. So just continuing to find ways to improve the logo in terms of making it as simple as possible, and also making sure colors aren't too harsh, and then that they do have high contrast in areas where you want a lot of attention and focus, which would be the C and the G. So now that we have the C and the G, people need to know what that stands for. So let's go ahead and write our typography out, our coffee guild. I'd like to go back to our concept and have it written just like that around the edge, so we can go ahead and do that. So we're going to use the type on path tool. We're just going to grab our ellipse tool, flip that to a stroke so I can kind of see where the type is going to go. And the type on path tool, if you haven't used it yet, it's a pretty awesome tool. So I'm going to go to type on path, so I'm just going to go down here to my type and then go down to type on path. And I'm going to click right here at the beginning, and I'm just going to go ahead and type in my letters here. I just went and clicked right on the line. So coffee guild, and there is a the, so we don't want to miss out on the coffee guild. And now we need to kind of get an idea on size. I'm not going to mess with the font, the type choice yet, but I'm going to mess with size. So I have a little keyboard shortcut that really helps kind of make it, instead of having to go up here all the time and change the lettering, all you have to do is do Command Shift, and you're going to do your brackets on the bottom left. I'll go ahead and show you a picture of that. You're going to do your left bracket to make it lower and your right to make it bigger. So I'm going to be doing that a lot throughout the class. And now I want to add some spacing, and I also perhaps want to make it all capital letters, because I think with lowercase letters it's not quite as strong. And plus with lowercase letters I hate putting wide spacing. I'm going to show you lowercase letters should never have a lot of wide spacing between them, because they just feel a little bit, I guess, immature in its look, a little less professional, and it doesn't seem as cohesive. So you'll always hear me say don't use a lot of spacing with lowercase typography, but uppercase it's okay, because uppercase are all in the same kind of X height, or they're all the same cap height, I guess I should say, and so they have a lot better, they seem a little bit more together. So I'm just going to go in my character panel and I'm going to make this all caps. So now I have all this all caps, and get an idea and size for that. I can also go ahead and copy and paste this. We need to have our established date somewhere. I think that would be a good counter to have a lot of heavy text up here. We need to have some kind of counter to that so it doesn't seem so top heavy. So putting it along the bottom makes a lot of sense. So we're going to do established. It's 2016. And we don't want to just rotate this and have it be upside down. We want to have it right side up. We always want to do that. So we're just going to go down. This is a little bit tricky, but you can look for that little icon right there. And you're going to click. You're going to click and hold, and it's going to, sometimes it gets a little funny. It's going to go ahead and reverse it on the inside instead of being on the outside. So that gives us a chance to have it be read right side up. So now we're going to make that a lot smaller, and we're not going to have as much wide spacing between that. It doesn't need to stretch as far. So we're just going to do maybe a 50 spacing. And there we go. So what I might do is I might do lowercase for this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to character and just take the all caps off. And what's great about when you do font pairing and you put together different font and typefaces, it's always good to have contrast. So right now I'm going to have this really all caps typography, and then down here could be lowercase, just kind of a way to mix it up a little bit so everything is easily separated and read as separate items. Now the all-important typeface choice. So what typeface or font should we use for this? And so we got to really think about the style of the logo. So this is really kind of a flat style. It's using, there's no drop shadows, there's no gradients. It's a very simple flat design. So we want to stick with maybe kind of a thicker, chunkier typeface to pair well with this kind of thicker kind of elements that we have. So let's think about that as we make our type choice. So this is Helvetica, and let's go ahead and make this a similar gray so we can kind of see it in that final shade. And we could just cycle through several of these to get an idea. I already have kind of one picked out, but I'm going to go over some that could work really well. So we use Azo Sans Black for the G, so it's great to have consistency. Of course, we modified this significantly, so we don't necessarily have to use that same typeface since we modified it. But this works really well. It's got like a nice thick chunky type, and it's really readable when you zoom out. That's why I really like thicker type choices, especially for seals when the type is not as large as it is when it's the main focus point of the logo. So it's nice to have that nice chunky font. So that's a great choice. There's ones that have a little bit more character to them that we can try. This is a slab serif, so it's got kind of these slabs kind of coming off of the type. And so with slab serifs, this can work really well to add a little bit more character to it. And of course, scripts in all caps, it's going to be really hard for that to be read, so that's not going to be a really good choice. When you zoom out, you lose it. You lose kind of that thinner type choice. This could be kind of elegant. It's a little bit thicker. You can always use a bolder weight if you're going to use kind of a serif typeface, but it makes it a little bit more professional and high-end. It kind of, anytime you use a serif, it just looks more high-end. So if that's kind of the look you want to go for, you know, that could, or you got to kind of think about your logo target audience. This is where we think about the client, what's going to resonate. And this is going to be millennials who are going to come and work and use this as a working space. You know, I really want to use a more contemporary sans serif typeface. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about when I'm picking the typeface out. And there is one I picked out ahead of time. There it is. Herb on Black. That's kind of one when I was doing this concept. I did all of these concepts and fleshed them out before I filmed the class to get an idea of kind of the direction I wanted to go in. And this is kind of the typeface I settled on. I spent about a half hour doing exactly what I was doing before, kind of testing out different ones. And this seemed to work really well. It kind of matches a little bit of that geometric kind of look down there in the bottom, and it's got a similar weight. So everything seems consistent, like it kind of goes together. And this is where we can kind of reduce the type size. Of course, you do that shortcut, which is Command Shift, and do your left bracket, and kind of see what spacing looks like here. And this, of course, this bottom one can change. We can match it, make it smaller, or we can have a different typeface altogether. That's okay if you have more than one typeface. Just try not to have more than 3 or 4 in a logo. That definitely is not a good idea.